1960, our son was born, and here I was feeling that my son was very, very lucky not to know what kind of life his mother had had. And then I began to feel very uncomfortable about the whole thing, and I said to myself, but isn't a son entitled to know about his mother's life? And I began to feel ill at ease with the decision I had made long ago of forgetting what had happened to me. And it just didn't sit right anymore. And the books I would never consider reading, I began to read now, and I began to look for ways to come in contact with the self I had left behind so long ago. And in 1967, when the Arab-Israeli Six-Day War occurred, I realized that I belonged to this community forever, and that the existence of the Jewish community was, in a way, my existence, and that I wanted to reconnect and to find ties to bind me again. And I really didn't know at this point how to go about it. So my first contact with the big issue was something called Auschwitz, the beginning of a new era at St. John the Divine in Manhattan. It was a seminar, a 2-day seminar. And I attended it and I listened very carefully. And then I heard the last speaker said, there are many of you in the audience who know the truth, and you must tell the world so that the world might learn. And I realized that I'm one who knows. And I happen to have been in a position to tell because I'm a teacher. And I came back to school after that summer, and I began to talk about the fact that some schools are teaching about the Holocaust, and in our school it's a dead issue, and why is that? And it seemed to me that the first person to connect with was the history chairman. So I went to him and I told him that I can be his resource person because of my experience. In that school, nobody knew that I was a survivor. And he listened to me, and then he told me, listen, he said, this is a very reactionary neighborhood we're in, and rocking the boat will do no one any good. So it's better to be quiet. And I walked away from him feeling very devastated, because it seemed to me that here I'm being quiet and I'm told I have another responsibility. So I go and I try to do something, and he tells me it's best to be quiet. And as I was walking down the hall, I must have had this forlorn look on my face, because a man who had been raised as a Lutheran said to me, what's the matter? You look like you lost your best friend. And I blurted out and told him the whole story. He was the chairman of the English department. And he was the man who said to me, not at that moment, but some days after, we began to come back to this fairly regularly. And he said to me, look, he said, I'll sponsor the class if you'll teach it. And I said, oh, no, I couldn't do that. I'll be a resource person. I'll come in, but I won't teach the whole class. And he said, well, there's nobody else fit to teach it. He said, you know, most people don't know anything about this subject, including myself, he said. I know very little. And he suggested, on his suggestion, I then realized that the only way to get the job done was to do it. So I enrolled with Yafa El-Yech at Brooklyn College. And I took whatever courses I could, wherever they were given, I took them all. I went from one school to another, bought all the books, read everything. And then I came back to school and I announced I'm ready to teach the class. And we put together a class, and I've been this is now, the whole thing started in '67. I began teaching sometime in '70. We're now in '91. It's probably about 20 years that I've been teaching youngsters about the Holocaust. And I am very hopeful that they understand that the issue is man hating man because we're different, and that it can't go on, and that the cycle must be broken, and that they are the people to do it. And I try very hard, and I hear from them. I now hear from old graduates who tell me they're doing their best. But I think we need a lot more help.